I'm Ann Dark.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to episode 108 of It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club. The month of April, we're kind of devoting to nominees for the Agatha Awards this year. Unfortunately, Malice was canceled, but we wanted to give those who were nominated a little light to shine. And today we have Tara Laskowski, who is nominated for Best First Novel, and her husband, Art Taylor, who is nominated for Best Short Story.
Tara Laskowski is the award-winning author of the debut novel, One Night Gone, and two short story collections, Modern Manners for Your Inner Demons and Bystanders. She won an Agatha Award in 2019 for her short fiction and was the longtime editor of the online flash fiction journal Smoke Long Quarterly. A graduate of Susquehanna University and George Mason University, Tara grew up in Pennsylvania and lives in Virginia. Her story, One Night Gone, is about the perfect place to disappear. One sultry summer, Maureen Hathaway arrives in the wealthy town of Opal Beach to start her life anew, to achieve her destiny. There, she finds herself lured by the promise of friendship, love, starry skies, and wild parties. But Maureen's new life just might be too good to be true, and before the summer is up, she vanishes. Decades later, when Allison Simpson is offered the opportunity to house sit in Opal Beach during the off-season, it seems like the perfect chance to begin fresh after a messy divorce. But when she becomes drawn into the mysterious disappearance of a girl 30 years before, Allison realizes the gorgeous homes of Opal Beach hide dark secrets. And the truth of that long-ago summer is not even the most shocking part of all. Art Taylor is the author of the story collection The Boy Detective and the Summer of '74 and Other Tales of Suspense, and of the novel and stories On the Road with Dell and Louise, winner of the Agatha Award for Best First Novel. He won the 2019 Edgar Award for Best Short Story for English 398 Fiction Workshop, originally published in Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine. And he has won 3 additional Agatha Awards, an Anthony Award, 3 Macavity Awards, and 3 consecutive Derringer Awards for his short fiction. Better Days tells the story of a father and son stuttering through a relationship without the mitigating presence of the mother who has passed away. Set on the coast in North Carolina, this is the story of a man's struggle to define himself in a new way with his father, a new job, and hopefully a new romance. And, of course, there's a murder.
We would like to welcome Tara Laskowski and Art Taylor to our program. They are both nominees this year for an Agatha Award. Tara is nominated for the Best First Novel, and Art is nominated for his short story. Welcome, Tara and Art.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
for having us.
Tara, where did you get your inspiration for the character of Maureen? Is she based on a real person?
So Maureen is one of 2 characters, obviously, in my novel, One Night Gone. She's the sort of reckless teenager. And no, I did not base her on anyone. In fact, I joke that she's like anti-me. Like when I was that age, I was very law-abiding citizen. And Maureen's a little bit reckless. She takes risks and she's a little stubborn and headstrong. strong. And she was really fun to write. I enjoyed writing her. Her voice kind of just came to me, like just speaking for her, basically.
Well, she was really fun to read, too.
Yes, she was.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I actually enjoyed writing her scenes more than I enjoyed Allison's scenes, but don't tell Allison that.
Okay, Art, what is your secret to writing a prize-winning short story?
Oh, I wish I knew. I think about that question a lot because I'm working right now on an essay for a new anthology of essays on writing mystery stories. Lee Child is putting out an anthology and I'm doing the section on short stories. So I've been thinking about what kind of advice to give to people to write good short fiction. The three words I keep coming back to are economy, efficiency, and focus in terms of just trying to get a lot of information in a short amount of space. Obviously, you've got to hook the reader pretty quickly. That word hook comes up a lot with some conflict, some character that's engaging, some conflict that they're facing, and some trouble ahead. And then it's just a matter of trying to pack as much as you can into a short amount of space and keep that focus on a single storyline and please the reader in the process.
Well, that's a lot of stuff to keep in mind.
It is. I know. I recognize that.
Well, Tara, the Opal Beach area of Maryland became its own character in this story. Is there a real Opal Beach near Maryland? I know there's one in Florida.
So I'm glad you said that about the beach being a character, because I really felt that way as I was writing it, that this beach just became its own being. I really enjoyed writing about it because I was able to sort of explore it in the summertime when all these like tourists are there, and then also in the more eerie off season. As far as if it's a real place or not, no, I made it up. And what I kind of did was I took the best of all of these beach towns that I have visited. So like the boardwalk of Ocean City, Maryland, and then, some of the like more private shore beaches that have like the big houses. And I sort of put them together to make Opal Beach. And I liked the dichotomy of the sort of fear and, this sort of heavy touristy area. And then also these people who are living in these luxury houses right on the ocean.
Ocean City, we've all visited there many times, and it truly is a completely different being in the winter compared to the summer.
Yeah. And that was really fun to explore that. My husband, Art, and I, his parents have a beach house in North Carolina. We went down there a couple years ago for Thanksgiving, and it was really beautiful weather, but it was very eerie because there was really like no one there. And that's kind of where I got the idea for the book sort of started. Like, what would it be like to live in a beach town in the middle of winter? So that's sort of where that sparked from.
Art, Better Days is about 10 pages long, but it has a love story, a murder mystery, a family dynamic between father and son, as well as a few other things. How do you put your stories together? And are your stories character-based or story-based?
Well, it's interesting, the transition here from Tara talking about the beach to this question. Better Days is actually a sequel to a story I wrote several years ago, almost 10 years ago, called A Drowning at Snow's Cut. I'm backing up there just to explain that was actually based on a trip that my dad and I took along the North Carolina coast from the very beach that inspired Tara's book. My family lives down in North Carolina. And so that trip from Morehead City down to Wrightsville Beach and then a little further beyond Wrightsville Beach was the basis for A Drowning at Snow's Cut. I followed the same path for the father and son in that story as my own dad and I took, and then I added murder to it, of course, added some imagination to it. My trip with my dad and I, that was mostly just like eating out and having fun. So several years later, more recently, obviously, I decided I wanted to revisit those characters. And it was the father and son, and it was the place itself, the beach town, the coastal town, that helped inspire this. That was the thing that I went into it looking at. Other elements in that really goes back to kind of what I was saying about how to do an ideal short story. The focus here is mainly on that father and son. What are the other complications that can go in there? Here's a father who, the mother that held the two of them together died a few years ago. Father and son are trying to figure out how they're going to get along, how they're going to go ahead. But there's also a romantic relationship. The son is looking forward to having some sort of life of his own, and how can he forge that with somebody else? And then there's a third person in kind of a love triangle there on that level. So you just kind of pile the complications on and navigate those and hopefully bring them together. So I did balance a lot in there, but most of it is focused primarily for me on the dad and the son and how well they get along together and how they're going to, forge new life past the death of the woman that held them together.
Well, it was very well done. I enjoyed it a lot.
We can definitely see why it was nominated.
I appreciate it. This has been a special story to me. I obviously mentioned a lot about fathers and sons. The story came out last year in the May-June issue of Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, and it had just been delivered. A few days after that, my dad passed away. So that was obviously a very sad thing no matter what, clearly. But sad timing as well, a story which talks about fathers and sons, and to lose my own dad there. A story that's special to me in many ways.
Our condolences to you. That's very sad.
Thank you so much.
And for our listeners, you can go on the Malice website to read Art's short story as long as the other ones that are nominated.
Yeah, it's a great batch of stories. Pleased to be among those as well.
Okay, back to Tara. You have two separate stories. You have Allison and you have Maureen's story, of course. How did you keep those stories from crossing each other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. That was really the hardest part, I think, of writing this book was the 2 points of view. And when I had originally thought about the idea for the book, I knew I wanted to tell the story of the missing girl or the dead girl, because in a lot of these kinds of domestic suspense novels, you get the dead girl or, the missing person, and the whole story revolves around this person, but you never really find out why, what happened to this person or what they were thinking or what their motivations were or anything. So that I really wanted to make sure that Maureen's story was there and that people understood her as a full character. The challenge was, as I was telling her story and Allison's sort of parallel, how did I make sure that it was still suspenseful for the reader and that I wasn't giving away too much or too little or repeating too many things? That was the biggest challenge. And I think what really helped me was later in the stage when I was working with my editor at the publishing house. And she had me actually separate out both threads, which I hadn't done when I'd originally written the draft. She had me look at each one separately and say, okay, are these telling a complete story on their own? And that really helped kind of shift things around and see where they should fit together and how each story was working on its own before putting them back together. So I think she helped me a lot. I have to give credit to my editor for that.
Well, Art, you write mainly short stories, but I could see Better Days as a book. Is there a novel in your future?
Yeah, I've actually gotten that before. I had a book that came out, On the Road with Dell and Louise, which came out about 5 years ago, and it was a novel in stories. There were 6 stories in there that followed the title characters, Dell and Louise, these small-time crooks, on adventures from the American Southwest through California, up to North Dakota, and then to North Carolina. And what was funny is the way I'd envisioned it is each story would be a standalone, and together the stories would tell a larger story. And each of the stories as well would have their own tone and flavor. One a little darker than others, one a little more comedic. There's a caper in there. There's a detective story in there. There's a noir story. And I had several people come up to me afterwards and they're like, why did you do that? You could have had a book for each one of those the way that it worked. I would have given a full book to that, which I think is funny because of the way that I do kind of condense things there. Better Days has a lot going on in it. I like those characters. I've actually considered the idea of writing a book featuring these characters. I've drafted at least first chapter of that with an eye toward where that adventure might go. But I have been working on another book for many years. It's a boarding school novel. It's set in a boys' boarding school in the mid-1980s, a murder there, and a couple of kids who were first years at school who decided they want to be Sherlock Holmes and Watson and solve this murder. Needless to say, get in a little deeper than they'd expected on that. And then fast forward in 25 years, one of those boys is invited back to reunion and additional problems 25 years later that bring that crime back into focus. So that's the novel that I'm trying to work on now, though I have not ruled out the possibility of letting the folks from Better Days have their own book as well.
Oh, interesting. Tara, is there a difference between flash fiction and short stories?
Well, sort of. I guess short stories would be the umbrella and flash fiction would be something underneath them. So, Art writes a lot of short stories. I also write a lot of short stories. And I was the editor of a flash fiction magazine called Smoke Long Quarterly for about 10 years. How we defined flash fiction is stories that are 1,000 words or less. So you're talking 2 or 3 pages max. Some people call flash fiction 500 words or less, but basically they're super short stories. The challenge is, I think, to try to tell a complete story, like a story that feels whole, complete, like in as less words as possible. I like that challenge. And I think flash fiction is like really playful and fun and you can experiment with it and stuff. So it was really fun to edit Book-Long for that long and to read so much Flash. For a long time, I was writing a lot of Flash, and then I decided to go crazy and try to write a novel. So
You went from one extreme to the other.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It was very painful too. It was very hard, but
Well, this is a question actually for both of you. Are you both competitive with each other in your writing process?
Yeah. You want me to go first? Or you want to go
yeah,
first?
go for it.
No, Tara and I first met at George Mason University. We were in a writing program together. And the thing that first formed the friendship between us was actually admiration for one another's writing and the support that we gave one another's writing. Even in workshop, Tara was giving me the most enthusiastic